You showed the film in Korea. Did I hear that?
We did. We had our international premiere in Busan.
How did it feel for you to show that film in Busan, and how did it go over?
We were all petrified.
우리 둘이서 여행 가자. 너한테 소개시켜줘야 되는 사람들이 있어. She never stopped worrying for her son.
I want to talk about the title first, actually. So I
Sure.
think if you're like a Sigur Rós fan or you're
yeah.
a Yeonji fan, like you'll know. So like, were you listening to that while you were making this? Is that where the title comes from, or?
Yeah. I mean, when I start writing a new script, I like to pick an album, or sometimes like the album comes first, the music comes first, and I go, oh, like something about the sound, something about this feeling, is resonating with me. I'd love to make a film that kind of like almost like accompanies that music. And I was really into that album at the time, and I started working on this script. And, early on it was just ideas and scene ideas or characters and stuff like that. And because it is inspired by my own experiences, I had a plethora of ideas, but no real story or focus. So I thought, maybe if I gave it a title, I'll be able to find some kind of focus on the story. And so I liked the way the words "Riceboy Sleeps" looked. I liked the sound of it. I liked the album cover. Visually, tonally, like I thought it was accurate to what I was going for. And so Riceboy Sleeps. Here we go. And then as time went on, the storyline started to sort of meld with the title, and it just stuck.
The film sort of is not your own story. It's not the story of you.
Yeah.
But it does mirror your own experiences a little bit.
There are specific scenes, there are specific events that occur in the story that are based on things that happened to me. But then really what is autobiographical is the character's emotional journey, the boy's emotional journey throughout the story, throughout the film, and also the relationship between the mother and son. I would say that's what's most autobiographical about the film.
So your story is that you came to Canada when you were how old?
I moved to Vancouver Island when I was 8 from Korea. And then in my teens, I grew up in Coquitlam, BC. And that was a time that was very different than now in regards to the population. It was, especially in Vancouver Island, it was predominantly white Canadians. And I was the only Korean boy, the only Asian student in the whole school. And with that came, certain interesting challenges that much of ended up in the movie.
Help me understand that. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, a lot of the kids had never seen a boy that was from Asia before. I think for the kids in elementary school when I first came here to Canada, kids looked at me like I was like it was almost as though like an exotic animal walked into the room.
Right.
And they found everything about my appearance fascinating, and what I brought for lunch, or how I dressed, or these things, my accent, these things were all equally entertaining or humorous to them.
Yeah.
As it was interesting.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I was like a victim. I'm not going to sit here and say I was like a victim of racism, and but I was teased. There were many jokes made throughout my childhood. There were times where I did get into trouble because I would lash out, and but then as time went on, I found a way to assimilate, and I found that one of the ways that I started to fit in was through jokes, through making kids laugh. Because I realized if I can make a joke about myself first, make fun of myself first, make fun of someone else first, and usually I wasn't making fun of other kids. I would usually make fun of teachers.
Yeah.
Then if I could get kids to laugh, then the attention would come off of me and they wouldn't make fun of me.
Yeah, I know that one. I did that one too.
Yeah.
I know that one.
So,
yeah.
I did that. I started to figure out how to make friends that way. And then I got good at sports. And I realized, oh, if you're good at sports,
Yeah.
it's like the easiest way to like fit in with the cool kids.
It's the cheat code.
Yeah. That was kind of how I navigated my way through school.
It's a beautiful film. It's a really touching film. There's some moments though that made me laugh.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah, I almost feel like apologizing to you.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it really made me, like, I love the scene surrounding English names.
Yeah.
Which is something we talk a lot about on this show, and even just in our office, but
Yeah.
but also here in the studio. So like, which is you have one too, right? Like when did you start getting called Anthony?
Grade 3 when I moved to Canada.
Right.
That's that scene that is an exact reenactment of what happened.
Tell me the story.
There's a real life Miss Jane.
This is the
based on
teacher who's-
The teacher. Please don't be offended, Miss Jane, if you see this film. We moved to Canada, and first day of school. I'm already petrified, and we're doing the what do you call it? When the school attendance.
Yeah.
And it's all like Billy, Jenny, Stacy, and then my Korean name's Myung-bo. It's spelled Myung-bo, and it's difficult to pronounce. Like I don't hold it against anyone, and it was just butchered.
Oh yeah.
It was butchered,
Yeah.
and kids thought it was the funniest sounding thing ever, and that became like the start of my life in Canada. That was day one.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh.
No, you should laugh. It's funny. It's because I'm
It's
not
a
the
rough
only. Yeah,
start.
it's so tragic. It's funny, and I think it's funny. And then the teacher was really sweet, and she realized, first she thought I was a mute. She asked my parents if I spoke, if I had the ability to speak, because I never spoke. And then she was like, okay, this kid is clearly not able to fit in and is like the one getting picked on by everyone. He's the punching bag of the class. And she figured, maybe if he got a name that was easier for the kids to pronounce, then things would be a little easier for him. And so she told my mom, she said, have you thought about this? And my mom goes, we don't know any names. The only names that I knew of was Michael Jordan and The Simpsons. And I was told The Simpsons was not an option for me. And so then she wrote down 4 names for us to choose from. She said, here are 4 names that I recommend. And it was, as it mentioned in the movie, it was Richard, Kevin, Stanley, and Anthony. Anthony was the 4th option, was our 4th choice out of the 4, because Korean people don't like to pronounce TH.
Right.
And it was like, as in the movie, it was like, we're thinking of going with Richard. Oh, my son's name is Richard. Well, we can't have that. That's going to be so confusing. What are we going to do? And then it went down the list, and it was going to be Anthony, and I was not happy about it.
You didn't want to be Anthony?
Oh, God, no. Because it was so hard to spell. Or it's so hard to pronounce.
Yeah, of course.
The idea of being called something that is completely foreign to me, has no meaning to me, that I have no relationship or attachment to, just didn't sit well with me at that age. But, didn't have a choice.
And when did you come around on it, or did you?
I still don't like my name. It causes so much trouble in my life to this day, because then it's like so many Asian people struggle with this, which is like you deal with anything that has to do with like government ID and
Oh
stuff.
yeah, of course.
Like I essentially have 3 different names that circulate around
Right.
everything I do, so
Right.
things don't match.
Right.
I've been denied boarding a flight once.
Because your name was, you went up as Anthony, and
Yeah, because a production sent my flight ticket as Anthony Shim, and my passport says a Korean name. So it's crazy. It's crazy.
it's a funny scene. Those scenes are funny. So where your character, I'm going to say, David, is a child, sort of being you, and getting to choose a name, getting to choose an English name, and wants to call himself Michael Jordan.
하는 거 싫어. 마이클 조던 할래.
그래 그러면 마이클 킴에 뭐 아니면 조던 킴 하던가. 근데
싫어. 마이크 조달한다고. 마이크 조달.
그만! 마이크 조도는 안 돼, 알겠어? 두 번 다시 얘기 안 한다. 그러니까 빨리 다른 이름 골라.
Was it important for you to bring some, I guess, levity or humor or something funny to this story? Were those scenes important to you?
Well, funny enough, this when I first started out writing the story, the script, it was a comedy.
Really?
I wrote it because I found these experiences that I had to be so absurd looking back on them that I thought they were actually humorous. And so the early drafts, a friend of mine referred to it as the Korean Superbad.
Right.
Because it really centered around the boy's relationship with his friends and his childhood experiences, and it was all meant to be quite humorous. And then as time went on, as drafts went on, it started to find a different tone and a different storyline. So because I started from that place, it was just that I never deviated entirely from it.
Yeah.
And I actually thought the film was going to be more funny than people are now taking it. People talk so much about how sad the film is, and I go, "Oh, well, I thought it was more funny than that." But
It is quite
it is sad. I mean, I'm not going to deny that, but
yeah.
I think that the absurdity and the tragedy of it, I just think they go hand in hand. It's just it's a real fine line between tragedy and comedy.
When you started to get interested in film, was it that you wanted to be in front of the camera, or was it that you wanted to be behind the camera?
I never really thought about it like that. I just didn't. I've always loved movies. I grew up watching movies. I grew up loving theater. I grew up and reading plays, and I just never knew I just didn't understand how a film got made. I didn't even understand what the role of a director was. I didn't, like how the job titles and the roles that people play in order to make a movie was just a mystery to me. So I never thought that there was anyone behind the camera. I just thought it was, whoever you see on screen are the people that make movies.
Right.
And so then I stumbled upon acting because my mom wanted me to be less introverted.
You were still pretty quiet.
Yeah, I mean, this was pretty early on. Yeah,
Yeah.
and she wanted me to, I wasn't very good at speaking in front of people. I didn't do well around groups of people, more than like 4 people. And because my mom actually was, she did theater in college, and she fell in love with it. She fell in love with acting. She fell in love with the performing arts, and she thought, and she always encouraged me to take part in in everything. I played musical instruments. I played sports. I took art classes. And she thought theater would be an interesting way for me to challenge myself, get out of my comfort zone. And I did, and I took to it immediately. And there was something so liberating about being on stage and being able to express myself through words, through emotion, through my body, and it just felt so natural. And that just led to one thing after another, and just acting wasn't quite enough. I loved moving bodies around on stage.
Did you do Smallville around this time? Was that the first role you did? You did Smallville.
I did do Smallville. That was my first professional acting
old were
job
you?
ever. I was at 18 or 19. That was like, it's life-changing. That blew my mind when that happened.
So that must have been something for someone who doesn't know how the sausage gets made.
Well, then I started to see how things are getting made, and it kind of broke my heart, because it wasn't as magical as I imagined it to be. It felt like a construction set. And I thought, and I loved that show as well. That was my favorite show growing up. I was a big Superman fan as a kid. Right. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be an actor on the show, and it's just going to feel like magic everywhere, No, I mean, you know what a film set is like. It's just a lot of C-stands and lights hanging and really rough people.
Yeah, pulling cable and eating
yeah.
carrots,
Yeah,
carrot
and,
sticks,
and I wasn't sure if that was for me when I did that.
Well, so I should say you're in the film.
I am.
You are a character in the film.
I am.
Who is a Korean Canadian man who was
Adoptee.
He was raised by white parents,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Did playing that character make you think about assimilation? Did writing that character make you think about assimilation?
When I was writing that character, I originally wrote it as a South Asian man.
Yeah.
And I intentionally don't write characters that I could play because I don't want to act in something that I direct. And so I had made it intentionally a South Asian character. And then as time went on, as a script evolved, the character just wasn't working. And then when I thought, oh, what if he was an adoptee? And then in that sense, then I'm able to explore some of the same struggles that the other two protagonists are going through, but from a different vantage point. And I thought that was a really interesting dynamic. So I changed the writing, and then I changed the character on paper, and then it was after that kind of dawned on me that it would be best if I played the role. I mean, I had done so much research on Korean people who were adopted by families outside of Korea. And so then as I just got deeper and deeper into it, it did make me think a lot about the struggles of identity and trying to fit in, and the question of where is my home? And
I mean, this is something, when I was doing my research for this interview, I've seen you talk a little bit about the idea that I think at some point you were struggling with maybe a little bit when you were growing up with how much of sort of with the more Korean customs do I want to have in my life?
Yeah.
How many more Canadian customs do I want to have in my life?
I realized there's an entire generation of people around the world who are struggling with the same questions, but have very different experiences in a way. And so I wanted to incorporate that into the film. And to be honest, there's an entire film or series that could be about characters like Simon.
Yeah.
Which I would like to tackle one day.
Tell me this story. I heard it, that there's a scene in your mom with your character, Simon, and the mother character in the film, and she's talking to him and telling him a story. And this comes from something about your own mom. Your own mom gave you this. Is this right?
Oh, the folktale.
Yeah. Can you tell that story?
In one of the drafts, I decided to write that the characters decide to go visit the final location, and that they would climb up this mountain. So I'd written that into the script, and I was trying to find find meaning in that, and I was trying to figure out, why they're doing what they're doing, and because at the time I was doing a lot of research about Korean history, traditional Korean music, art, paintings, whatnot, and my mom knew this, and I was at her place, and she said, I watched this performance online of it's a thing called pansori, which is sort of like Korean opera almost. Mm-hmm. And it was about the story of Goryeo-jang, which is the story that So-young tells to Simon. And so watch this performance, and it's all singing, and it's devastatingly beautiful. It's incredible. And I watched it with my mom, and I said, what is the story? And she explained, she goes, Goryeo-jang is the story. It's an old folk tale that Korean people have been telling for a long time back in the day. It's a story about how when families were so short on food that they were in danger of starving to death, sons would carry their father, aging father or mother on their back, and they would take them up to top of this mountain where the elderly would be taken, and they would leave them there, and they would be left there to die. And then the son would come back to the town and go on about his life. And it's all in order to, make sure that his offspring survives. Mm-hmm. The story is that as they're climbing up, the son tells the mother that we're going to go look at the flowers up on the mountain. And she's going, and she catches on as they're going that she knows where she's going. She knows where her son is taking her. And so she starts plucking pine needles and dropping them behind her. And the son thinks she's just, she's senile, doesn't think much of it. He takes her up, lays her down, and goes, just hang tight. I'm going to go around the corner and I'll be right back. I'm going to bring you the flowers. And then he heads down.
Right.
And as the night gets darker, he starts to get lost, but then realizes there are these pine needles on the ground, and that's when it all comes to him that, oh, that's what his mother was doing throughout that whole trip. She had been laying these pine needles so that when he's returning back home, that he wouldn't get lost. And so I heard that story, and immediately I started biting my lips, preventing myself from sobbing in front of my mom.
Yeah. It must have been meaningful to you, especially that your mom gave you the story. Like that must have been meaningful to
It
put that in the
was.
film.
It was. Thanks, Mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That must- that must have-
It was incredible. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
You showed the film in Korea. Did I hear that?
We did. We had our international premiere in Busan.
How did it feel for you to show that film in Busan, and how did it go over?
We were all petrified because in Korea, whether it be film or TV shows that have to do with Koreans in foreign countries, made by foreigners, don't do that well often. It doesn't resonate with Korean audiences. And for me, if this was rejected by Korean audiences, I don't know how I would have bounced back from that. That would have been devastating. And we go, and the screenings sold out, I think, in like 10 minutes, all 3 screenings. So like, okay, well, at least people are interested and curious to see it. And we go, and it's, packed house. And as we're watching the film, before that we had screenings at TIFF and Vancouver. It's, home court advantage. And especially Vancouver, like everybody in the audience are,
Yeah.
I'm connected to in some way, and there's so
Yeah,
much love and
they're rooting
support.
for you.
And all the jokes, that have to do with the 90s references, pot references, like people are laughing their butts off, and it's going over so well, and it's vocal, and it's like, it just, you can hear it. You're like, okay, this is going well. In Korea, silence.
Whole movie.
Not a chuckle. We'll get like an hour and 50 minutes into it.
How are you feeling when?
I'm dying. I'm looking around going like bits where I think it's funny, like what happened, I go like, I look around like nothing. I'm like, oh my God, people hate this. Movie ends. No one applauds. People don't move. And I'm going, oh God, I can never come back to this country again. And then I later learn that's just how audiences in Korea are. It's people don't applaud during the credits because it's like, to them, the credits are part of the movie.
Right.
And so they were saving the applause until we got on stage for our Q&A.
And did they?
And they did. And then once we started doing the Q, and because Korean people don't express their emotions out loud in public so comfortably as, North Americans do.
Yeah.
Even the bits that were funny, they suppressed it.
Yeah.
People, we had some friends in the audience, they were like, oh, no, people were crying very quietly and would just, just like subtly wipe their tears. And then it was when we got into the Q&A, that's when we realized, oh, people are digging this.
How did you know?
Because of what they were saying. They were...
What were they saying?
That they loved it. And then it was more so afterwards. We got mobbed for autographs. Like that was a new thing. And then there was like a fan club called the Rice Girls that started like immediately after. And on the second screening, it was like more people. We started seeing signs in the audience. Like social media started to go crazy.
What does that mean to you, given that you were petrified about bringing that film back to Korea?
It means a lot. It means for me who was born and raised in Korea, raised in Canada, and then for me to go back with something that I created from here, and that they embrace it and that they support it and celebrate it. It's meaningful in a way that I'm not even sure I fully understand yet. Honestly, I think so, I mean, and everyone has their own thing, right? Like, why do I work hard? Why do I try to be successful at what I do? There's obviously personal ambition and there's ego involved, but I feel like at the end of the day, I'm just trying to make my mom and dad proud, for the sacrifices they made. I'm trying to make my, aunts and uncles proud. I'm trying to make my grandparents, who are no longer with us, but I'm trying to make them proud to feel like, I devoted my life to something, and that I am now successful in it. And so it's one thing to be doing well in Canada, for it to travel back home.
Yeah.
That became real.
Yeah.
That became like, that's when people finally went like, oh.
What did your mom say?
I never told her that. I mean, I've never said like, I'm doing this.
No.
to
But
make
what
it
did she say when you told her that it did so well?
Well, she was there. She was in the audience.
Oh, she came over.
Of course, yeah.
What did she
wasn't
make
gonna
of
miss
it?
I think at first it was difficult. I'm guessing. I'm assuming this. She didn't say this, but she's never been one to just, be ultra supportive no matter what. Like, if I suck, she's going to say, that wasn't so great. I think next time you should try and fix that or work on that part of, what you're doing.
Yeah.
Or if it's good, or, she would say, like, that element of what you did was excellent. And so she's always been brutally honest. And I respect that, and I really, really appreciate it. And so with this, I mean, she was very impressed by Yoon's performance. Because I had been telling her, because it mattered to her. There was this person who was going to portray her in some way, to some capacity. Although it's not her, it's inspired by her. So she wanted to make sure that this was going well. And I kept telling her, I said, don't worry, it's great. She's really nailing it. And so when she saw it, she really thought she thought it was an incredible performance. I feel like it's a little too close to home for certain people.
Yeah.
I got that sense when my mom's friends, our family friends, are the moms and dads of like the other Korean immigrant families that we grew up with, that are that I spent more time with than my actual family and relatives in Korea. So, they saw it too, and it meant a lot to me that, I try and do justice by them, serve them, serve their stories as well. And of course they were as proud as can be that someone from our community made a film.
Yeah. But it might be a bit close to home.
If it wasn't me that made this, I don't know how they would have responded. I think they might have been a little turned off, because I think it's so immediate. It's a little soon.
Yeah.
It's a little too soon. We're talking about something that these people experienced 20 years ago.
And are still experiencing. They're not looking back.
They're not out of that life. They're
No.
still there. They're living that life still. I think it's evoking questions that maybe they're not necessarily wanting to acknowledge at this point in their lives.
It's really beautiful, man. Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
it. I really loved watching it.
Thank you. I'm glad you liked it.